Yeah, now it's on.
Anuj, shut the phone. Shut the.
Hi, Tanushree.
Hi, Namita.
How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Nice to see you.
Same here. Thank you so much for joining us today on this.
No, thank you for inviting me.
I hope you got a chance to see what the FDC is about, or do you want me to brief you about it?
I vaguely know that it is something to do with a author conversation on your platform.
No, this is different actually. So this first draft club is based on the concept of NaNoWriMo, but we host it like 4 times a year. So
Okay.
all the attendees are actually aspiring to complete their novel in this month. So it could be fiction, non-fiction, it could be whatever they're writing. Some of them are even editing it, are on their second draft, not necessarily on the first draft. But all the
Okay.
participants in this, so for the month of November, we are all together. We have made a group on WhatsApp, and every Sunday we call literary guests. So today you are a guest. Next week we are
Okay.
having Dipankar from Readomania. Next Sunday he'll be joining us, and then we have an editor from Penguin House who will be joining on the 14th. And so that's how we have planned. So it happens every third month. So we do it 4 times a year.
Okay.
That's how it goes. So that is the reason why a lot of the questions that we discussed have also about writing and getting published and all that, more than only your book, focusing on only your book. It has got more with writing and publishing, because the audience that we have today is going to be more focused on that.
Okay. Although I haven't ever done NaNoWriMo.
Okay. But it's been pretty fun. It's been like it's a year. This is like the 5th one that we are hosting, and it's fun. We have close to 50 participants every month, every session that we host, and many of them have actually completed their first drafts. And some of
Really,
them
that's very good.
yeah, that's actually very inspiring. And the WhatsApp group is very active. So the conversations are only about writing. We don't allow any forwards and all that. So, but it's very active. There are a lot of writing prompts which they exchange, a lot of articles which they talk about. So there are also poets who participate in this, and they try to finish, writing one poetry a day. So it's the idea is to make writing a regular habit rather than having a goal,
Yes.
say. So, and this community helps because they become each other's
Yeah.
हाँ ठीक है क्या problem है?
on that.
Hi Namrata, this is Chetan.
Hi, Chetan.
Hello.
Hi, Chetan.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing good and hope the same for you.
Yes, I'm great. I'm sorry that I'm driving, so I'm going to keep the video off, but I'll be listening in on the conversation. I'll be on mute for most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you, Chetan. Thank you for having me here. I'm very happy to be here, actually.
It's great. It's great to have people like you in our community. It's fantastic. We are trying to build a nice community of writers as part of this FDC and bunch of other things also. So which city are you based in?
I'm in Pune.
You're in Pune. Acha.
Do you have anything here?
Well, we have a lot of participants. We have a strong presence of our writers and FDC members also in Pune. So you can chat about that when you start the session. But otherwise,
so maybe
we've never done
someday
any.
we can have a physical this thing get together, and I can do a little workshop kind of a thing if anyone is interested.
Sure, we could do something like that. I visit Pune once a year because I have some family there. But yeah.
Okay. Let me know the next time you are here.
I'll do that, definitely. This today's session, Namrata is going to lead. So Namrata, you can start letting people in probably.
Yeah, sure.
I'll just mute. myself. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Tanushree, we'll wait for like a couple of more minutes before we start. I'm just letting everyone in. Is that okay?
I think he's on mute now.
No, I'm asking you actually. Is that okay?
Okay, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Just wait for a couple of more minutes to see if more people are joining.
Yeah,
Others will start the session. Yeah.
Yeah, Namrata, the light and sound are all okay, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I have just started reading your book actually. The one that
Which one?
The one that is there for review in the
Okay,
book club.
invitation to die.
Yeah.
This one.
Yes. I did read bits of it before we started. We accepted it for the book club, but now I've started reading it in completion actually. I'm continuing with it. It's very interesting.
Okay. Thank you. Always good to have some feedback.
Yeah. I think we've got 15 participants. We'll start now. Then I can keep letting them in whenever they enter the session.
Absolutely.
So we'll there are still more people who are waiting. Just 1 second. I'll let all of them in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session. Today we have author Tanushree Poddar with us. Born in New Delhi, she worked in corporate sector for 8 long years before she quit the rat race to wield her pen and found her calling. A well-known travel writer and novelist, she is also known for the hundreds of middles that entertain readers of almost all English dailies in the country for over a decade. Tanushree is passionate about traveling and writing. Among her best-selling books in non-fiction genre are Death of a Dictator, The Story of Saddam Hussein, Secret of Happiness, The Ultimate Food for Body, Mind and Soul, The Power of Relaxation, etc. The book Smart Memory has also been translated into Tamil and Spanish. She has published 15 novels till date, which include Nurjahan's Daughter, Boots Belts Berets, Escape from Harem, On the Double, Solo in Singapore, I Fell in Love with a Soldier, Cakewalk Murder, No Margin for Error, and many. Boots, Belts, and Berets, and On the Double are soon to be adopted into web series. So thank you so much, Tanushree, and welcome to this session. As I was telling you, FDC is on the lines of NaNoWriMo, and all the participants that are here that you can see are aiming to either finish their novel, their first draft, or are working on the second draft or third draft. So the target is to write daily in this month. So your insights into writing and publishing would be of great help to all of us today here.
Thank you, Namrata. I'm very happy to be here. I'm sorry, I'm doing so many of these. So sometimes I do get a little busy.
That's absolutely
And thank
fine.
you everyone for being here. I hope whatever I have to say will help you in some way or the other.
So the first question, Tanushree, we have is from 2005 to till date. You've written almost like 15 books in 15 years, which is close to 1 book a year. So what is your writing routine like? Was it intentional to have a book out every year? Was that how you planned it to be and worked on it like rigorously year on year?
Actually, Namrata, I started writing books in the year 2000. And I started with non-fiction, as you have already mentioned. I have done about 16 non-fiction. And it was only after I was confident about the publishing industry because I had so much to learn. And that is when I stepped into the world of fiction. And in fiction, I have done 15. I'm not counting the juggernaut books like Cakewalk Murder and several anthologies. These are just the published paperbacks
Right.
15 of them that I'm speaking about now. These were done in 15 years. Yes, you're right. And though it may seem as though I have done one book a year, but often it's not been like that. Sometimes when I'm in a very good, kind of spirit and in that frame of mind, I have been able to do 2 books also in a year. And sometimes when I have not been able to focus myself so well due to so many reasons, I have not been able to produce much of writing. So it's very, you cannot quantumize actually.
Right.
And some books are more difficult to write and they take longer. And some books are fairly easier comparatively.
So what is your writing routine like? You are a plotter, you are a pantser. How do you go about planning your books?
Basically, I'm a pantser and I find it very difficult to plot out in details. I do have a vague idea about what the storyline is likely to be. And but when I start writing, it just sort of develops, and the characters get developed and the plot line becomes clear and so on. So it happens to me that way. It grows organically. I'm not much of a planner as such or a plotter, but whenever I'm asked this question, I always recommend that you plot, because it makes the writing so much easier and faster. A pantser requires a little more time, I think, because there have been times when I have to go back and scrap, say, about 30% of the book or so, and then start all over again because I had not planned. So to that extent, I would say that plotting is a much better option.
So you write daily? Is that how you follow the writing of your books, or?
Not really again. I like to write when I'm in total, mood, and I have very clear path ahead. I know where I'm going, because then I can work very fast and I sort of, work without much thinking, because then it just comes and it happens organically. But on the days that I'm not in a mood, I don't really force, because if I force myself, I'm not going to like what I write. So though I still say that one should write at least, 1,000 words or 500 words or whatever, but I don't really get to implement it that much.
Right. So you've written across genres like, nonfiction, horror, climate fiction, military fiction, romance, and there are many others. So how has been your publishing experience with them so far? And especially because this is an advice that is not recommended for authors either by the PR firms or the publishing houses, that, you should not keep experimenting with so many things. You should just hold on to one and try, getting your audiences used to that kind of category of fiction or non-fiction from you. So how has been your experience on this?
I have really not had much issues with that, because while there is a school of thought that an author should write one kind of book, a specific genre that, works for that person.
Right.
For me personally, I get bored very easily. I like challenges. And each time I step into a new genre, it is a challenge, because I have to modify my thinking. I have to research all over again. And it's a real challenge, and gives me a real good feeling about doing it that way. And as far as I have seen, you develop a reader base. If your work is good, it speaks for itself. And you develop a reader base, which if they like a certain kind of book, it doesn't matter. Like my military genre, I have readership which is very wide, and they really love. I have never asked anyone to review any of my military genre book, and Boots Belts has got over 300 reviews organically, which is saying a lot in these times and days, because and I get a whole lot of Instagram messages and all over social media and everywhere, saying how much they like the book. So some books will speak for themselves. And when I switch, I have no doubt that if I come back, the readership is loyal to me. So I don't really think similarly, even my mysteries, like, this Invitation to Die is the third one in the Acharya series. I have a readership which is pretty loyal to me, and they like my writing. So they go back, and in fact, if a first-time reader comes and buys the third one in the series, he goes back and buys the other two. So I find that the market for the first two has again, renewed and is getting a lot of orders. So I think, readers tend to pick authors according to the work that they, admire, not because of the writer writing in various genres. So my thinking is a little different on that count. Yes, I know mostly, but then I have published with big houses, publishing houses. So I don't see that as a stumbling block. And I think now the people and the publishing houses are opening up to the idea that one author can go and write so many kinds.
True. Just to add here, Tanushree's latest book, An Invitation to Die, is available for review for the Himalayan Book Club members. In case any of you are interested, I will share the link in the group later once the session is done. You are free to register. The club is free. The only thing we request is for you to put a review on Amazon and Goodreads, because that helps the authors. And it's actually a very good book. I've just started reading it, as you must have come to know by now. So Tanushree, moving on to our next question. 2 of your books have been picked up for on-screen adaptation. Can you share a bit about that experience? Like, did you approach your agent for this to take it forward? And how did this whole thing unfold for you? Last FDC, we had Siddharth Jain from the Story Inc. with us. And, book to screen is something that's very huge right now for all authors. And it would really help us to understand how it worked for you.
Yeah, in fact, I've got 3 books now. Two are military genre. One is Boots Belts Berets, as you mentioned. Then the latest book that has come out, The Girls in Green, that's also been taken for adaptation. And the third one is the first mystery in Acharya series, that is A Closet Full of Skeletons, which I just recently signed. And yes, I do have an agent. In fact, Siddharth Jain, The Story Inc., they represent all my books. So he has been a real great help to many authors. And I think he is the pioneer of this particular concept. And I think he is the only one who has represented so many books and got so many deals. As far as the experience goes, I think it's a great experience for any author to have their books translated into web series or TV serials or a cinema or whichever, because it gives them such a wide readership. And of course, the money is also very good, because as an author, one doesn't make so much money in publishing. Everyone knows that. Unless you are a Chetan Bhagat or Amish Tripathi, you really don't make that much money. But adaptation, yes, that is another ballgame altogether. So what happened is, when I wrote Boots Belts Berets, that was way back in 2005, 2006.
Wow. Okay.
Suddenly, about 3 years back, there was a lot of interest in it. I got feelers from about 3 production houses asking me if I was willing to, have my book translated and, sort of adapted into a web series. And that's how I got in touch. Siddharth got in touch with me. And then thereafter, we took it forward. And in fact, web series was just, beginning to open up to Indian writers. The concept was fairly new, say about 3-4 years back. And since then, I think I have realized what it means. And Siddharth is a great help. Anyone can reach him.
Yeah, that's actually very helpful to know. So some of your titles have also been translated into Tamil and Spanish. So what was that experience like? Were you involved in the translation process, and how did you go about it?
Namrata, I had a very bad experience when I first started in publishing. And here I would like to warn all the authors who are listening in that please be very careful with whom you publish, because I had no idea about what the publishing industry was like. And the first few books I gave without thinking, and I gave them for a song. today, if I laugh when I see the contracts, I really don't know whether to laugh or cry, because I really got cheated. And they translated it without informing me. I was never informed about the number of copies they were selling or how many editions they took out. And it was a very, very bad and unpleasant experience. So there are many such publishers in the industry who are very unscrupulous. Of course, these days, the authors are very smart. When I began, I had no idea and I was very gullible. And I think I got taken in because of that factor. But please be careful. Have your contracts vetted by some lawyer if you can, and see that the fine print doesn't go against you. Make sure that you are getting the worth of your work and don't give away all the rights. These are some of the things that I would like to mention here.
So just to clarify, a lot of us had those doubts. Is there no legal route once you come to know that somebody has released your book in another language or without your knowledge, or is there something that actually we can do in India? Because I know in India we have very limited laws which are in favor of authors for copyrights or for plagiarism and all. We don't have that many rights. So is even in this case, is that true?
It is very true, because I did enroll the services of an agency, a very big lawyer, a consultant rather. And they told me, please try and get it done out of the court kind of a thing, out of court settlement, because our laws are very, very, very tentative. They don't really give you the right justice because it is not taken seriously. Because what happened is, out of the huge lot that I published in nonfiction, the publisher went and without my acceptance or without informing me, he republished them under different titles, and he put another co-author along with my name, which I objected to. I got to know from online, these sales platforms, and I approached them. I asked them, how did you do this? And I said, I threatened to sue them. Then he said, okay, I can give you some amount and all that. And when I asked the lawyer, they said, I think you should settle whatever, is offered, because it will be a long drawn battle and we don't know the outcome. So it gets very difficult. We have very few laws that govern it, and it's a very tedious process for a lawyer to go through the whole hassle. I would rather concentrate on writing and forgetting about the past and, getting published. But it was a bitter experience, and I want to warn all authors against such happenings.
That's very unfortunate and sad to know, actually. So moving on to our next question, you have written the first climate fiction novel of India, which is a very rare and an unheard genre till now, at least in India. So what was the reaction of your literary agent or the publishing houses, and were you skeptical, trying to experiment with something which was so new and so different?
See, climate fiction has always been very close to my heart. And I feel that it's not given so much weightage in our country. And so, Miss, like, I have been trying to do some work in that area. But as my experience, I would say that our readership, they are still not very, aware of this. And we don't have that kind of readership as of now. I entered the field a little too early. And I thought, packaging it as a thriller would make it more popular while driving the core message. But I was mistaken in a way that it hasn't done as well as I would want it to do. And it's a very interesting book. The unfortunate part is that it is a very, very interesting thriller, which would otherwise have, got a lot of readership.
Yeah.
So what I would say is that, yes, I don't always take an agent for all my books. For this, I did have an agent, and he did manage to, get me a publisher. And Reader Mania was very kind enough to, it was something which was a challenge for even them, because they also know it's a new genre. Having said that, I see a great future in sci-fi because we have not tapped it as yet.
True. I completely agree. Somehow I feel that, now if you were to maybe re-release that book, it would be looked at differently, because now climate change is something that everybody wants to talk about. It's there everywhere, even on social media,
Yes.
and everybody's having a conversation around it. So maybe now if you were to launch that book again, it would definitely have a lot of takers, I guess.
Yeah, I intend doing that, but not right now also, maybe another 2-3 years later, because I know it's worth it.
Yeah. So writing a book a year is no mean feat. And like you said, you sometimes actually end up doing 2 a year. So what about the marketing of your books? In today's world, when authors need to be hands-on with it, how do you manage promoting your works? And are there any top 3 tips that you could give to our writers on that?
Namrata, I'm not a very good marketer. To be honest, that is one part of writing that I find, turns me off, because I am an old timer. I believe writers should just write. That's the thought that I still nurture, but things have changed. And a writer is also supposed to do the marketing and, work towards getting the book more visibility. And I have been trying to do. And one of the efforts is to, send you the book for reviews. Because another thing that I've noticed is that readers appreciate the books. They send you private messages, but they don't come up and review, which is a very, very sad factor, because of which unscrupulous reviewership has come up.
Yeah.
There are these Instagram reviewers and all that who write pathetic reviews, charge for that. And that's because the genuine readers don't want to come up, and I don't know what's the reason really, because if you appreciate a book, there's no harm in coming forth and putting 2 words like the book, or good book, or bad book, or whichever way. Just 2-3 words would make so much difference. So I feel today social media has come to play a very, very important factor, because the physical world is suddenly turned upside down after the COVID thing. And so we see more of social media and online promotions. And if someone is savvy with those, because I know a whole lot of people who are publishing on Kindle, and they're great marketers. They do a fantastic job of marketing, and their books sell because of the effort. And one has to make that effort. I realize it. So I am making it as much as possible. And I seek everyone's cooperation to help me do it, because I am always learning. And at this age, learning is not so easy. One has to adapt oneself a lot.
True. Very rightly said. So your publishing journey has been with various publishers, starting with small publishing houses like Pustak Mahal, and to big names like HarperCollins, which has been the publisher for your latest book, and Readomania, of course. So what has your been experience with them, growing with them, and seeing the publishing industry for like over 10-15 years that you've seen? Any tips that you would like to share with the first-time authors who are just planning to pitch them? Because once they're ready with their first drafts, of course, the next step is to pitch it to publishers.
One thing that I have experienced is that most publishers have a need for a typical genre. They prefer to work in a particular genre with a particular author. So like HarperCollins has done about 5 books with me till now. And even the horror book is with the HarperCollins young adults. That's a different children's division. That is where I have stepped in this year. And so what has happened is, over the period of time, I have realized when a publisher has chosen to publish a certain genre that you're writing in, they're slightly hesitant to take another genre from you. So I have, different, like Bloomsbury has done my military. Then Harper has done my murder mysteries. And even Rowley has done some of my military. So I have sort of, realized that if I approach them for this specific genre, I could, get my book in.
Okay. So,
So that's one tip. I don't know if it works or not, but it clearly works to go through an agent firstly, because an agent knows which publishing house is looking for which kind of book, which we won't know. And most often, if you go directly, it may land up in a trash pile. Whereas the agents are more, likely to get the word in and send your manuscript to the right people. So just like Siddharth does the screen thing and he knows where to go for which book, the agent for your literary work also knows where to go. And that helps a great lot.
that's been very helpful. Tanushree, I had a question. This was not one of the questions that we had discussed, but see, over the period of time that you've been published, I'm sure you've seen a change in the readership habits in terms of a lot of ebooks coming out and digital platforms, like you mentioned, Juggernaut and all, coming up with books which are only digitalized. They are not available in paperback or hardcover. So, have you seen a difference in the reading habits in your readership also? Like, has it turned to digital more? Have your ebooks been able to sell more than your physical books, or has it been impacted by these changes, or do you think it does not? The lovers of paperback are still there and Kindle is okay as a hobby reading?
See, when I published with Juggernaut, the digital thing had just come and they had started it, in a big way.
Right.
And I was approached and I was a little hesitant because I had no idea about the digital publishing platform at all. And I wondered if people would really pick up and read my book. Yet I landed up doing 2 of my books with them. And now one of the books has come out as paperback. They have done it. It's not a paperback, sorry, ebook. It's on Amazon. I fell in love with the soldier. That was a digital book and it was with Juggernaut on their platform. Now it is available on Amazon. So I guess it's expanding, but at the same time, I am a hardcore paperback person. So though I do have a whole lot of books on my Kindle, I still love the feel of books and the paperbacks in my hand. I enjoy reading paperbacks, and many of the people that I speak say the same thing. Yet the new generation is very savvy with the Kindle version. And what has happened is last year, when the pandemic happened, we all realized that the ebook sales have gone up tremendously because the physical books were not available. They were not deliverable by Amazon also. And whereas Kindle books were available, they could be downloaded. So the readership grew. And another aspect is the Audible books, because I have had 2 of my books in Audible. And a lot of space has opened up for the Audible books also during the pandemic. So these 2 kinds of, formats have done very well last year and this year also to a certain extent.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Tanushree. I would like to open the floor for any questions that you might have. You can drop them in chats or you can raise your hands and unmute yourself to ask those questions. So Tanushree, by the time we get these questions, I just have one more question to ask you. I've noticed that you've written a lot of nonfiction. And from what we hear in the market is that nonfiction, be it pitching, be it writing and everything, is very different from what we usually do for fiction books. Like nonfiction has to be pitched even before the book is written. You have to be an expert in that field for your book to be accepted. So how you were a journalist and then this, migration to nonfiction and then fiction. So how did this happen? Were there any roadblocks or any tips that you could give us about how to approach nonfiction? Because a lot of us are actually aiming to write nonfiction.
In fact, I think nonfiction sells better than fiction, they say these days.
Wow.
At least the agents tell me, whenever you have a nonfiction, just let us know and we'll get you, an auction done. So for your book. So, but I have not gone back to nonfiction. And yes, what happens is nonfiction, you can actually do a brief outline. You can do, detailed chapterization. I think even if you don't do detailed chapterization, if you have a very good synopsis in place about what your aim is, what is a field, what is your expertise, and what kind of approach you are adopting, and send them, say, a single chapter, it might work. Whereas in a fiction, 3 chapters are, generally required, and a detailed chapterization is called for. And many of the publishing houses, if they don't know the name, it's a first-time author, they insist on having the full manuscript.
Mm-hmm. So was it easy for you to pitch your nonfiction, the first nonfiction that you ever wrote, or because you came from a journalism background, did that help you somewhere in terms of making your bio more stronger when you approached?
Namrata, actually, for me, I think I was an early entrant. There wasn't so much competition. When I came in 2000, the year 2000, I had a whole background of having written for many years. And I was easily embraced by the publishers. And, they, in fact, what happened is before one could be published and, it was in the process of editing, they would ask me, what is your next project? And they would insist that I send it to them. But of course, like I said, I got taken in for a ride. I did 11 books for that publisher and I got cheated royally. And so I had no such issues about, facing a challenge or something. But I think these days it's a different ballgame.
Right. So Tanushree, we have a first question from Sapna. She's asking, is sending the full script to an agent or a publisher safe, or should we copyright it before sending it out?
Nowadays they say that copywriting is a very good idea. I am a pretty careless person. I didn't do any copywriting. Even when I sent it for screen adaptation, I hadn't done any. In fact, I sent like Girls in Green was taken by a web this thing for adaptation before it was taken for publishing. I sent them the manuscript and I hadn't registered. So if it is a very big publisher, I don't think you have such issues. But if it is a small publisher, maybe it is preferable to have a copyright. But you will have to send your entire manuscript if they ask you for it. But first, go with 3 chapters and a detailed synopsis, a little bit about you, what you write and what led you to writing, a good bio and a good pitching letter, which I think online there are a whole lot of pitching ideas available. So maybe you can, take the help of those, pitch your book. If you're not going through an agent, pitch your book, send a detailed synopsis, write something about yourself, and make it, a great marketing task. It's like, any marketing. It's the first impression that matters. If they like that part, they will call for a full manuscript. And if they like that, they will go ahead and publish your book.
Sure, thanks. The second question we have is from Vandana. So she has written, hello, ma'am. As an author, do you have an emotional bonding with your characters? Can you tell a bit more about character development in fiction?
Yes, I literally live in the era that I write in that atmosphere. And I have a great bonding with the characters. Sometimes you realize that one character which you had thought was a minor character takes over and becomes so strong because you are actually living that kind of in that thought. You are sleeping with that character in mind. You are living with that character in mind. You do develop an emotional bonding, and somewhere down the line, you'll realize, as a pantser, I know that the character takes lead. It shows you where it wants to go, and the story goes organically to where it wants to go. So to that extent, characters are very, very important. And to develop a character, you have to just ensure that it is not a unidimensional character. Think of the people around you. My entire inspiration comes from the people around me. So when I sort of write about a character, I sort of equate it with a certain person I have met because I know that person. I know the behavioral aspects, his attitudes, his mannerisms. And when I substitute my character, the same things in my character, it becomes a very real life kind of a character. So to do that, you must try this experiment first to have some person in mind when you are developing your characters.
Thanks. That's been very helpful. The next one is from Subi. Can you share some creative writing tips for crime or thriller genre that you've developed as a published author?
Firstly, I would say that don't um, sort of develop. What happens is generally, I have seen the tendency of most people before they write, they start reading in that genre, whichever particular genre they want to write in. So maybe if you're writing a thriller, you will read about a dozen thrillers. And then what happens somewhere along the line, you sort of try to speak in that author's voice, which is a deadly thing because one should have its unique, it's your USP. Your voice is your USP. You develop your own very personal, very private voice. The way you express makes all the difference to the story. So one is that please do try and develop your own voice. Secondly, have the concept very clear. Recently, I was giving out, they asked me for 3 tips, and I just had this to say, well, of course, this is applicable to all genres. One is clarity. The clarity factor is very, very important. When you start writing a book, have the entire clarity about the story. The plot has to be very clear so that you don't stumble. Secondly, regularity, as Namrata said, you are all writing and you want to write in November and finish your book. Regularity is very important, though I may not be able to implement, but you can see from my gray hair, I have sort of earned my leisure and my slow pace. But initially, I was very, very industrious. So regularity and then brevity. Don't forget the importance of brevity. Brevity in the sense that when you start writing, you're always carried away. You want to, sort of write about the character so much, about the scenery so much that you forget the entire focus of the story, where it should be going. It is actually drawing the story back. The leader, you lose focus. The reader also loses interest. Like for myself, when I want to read a book and I find there are books of some 500, 600 pages, if it is too descriptive, if it goes beyond, say, 10 pages or so, I tend to skip those pages. So I would say that today, the attention span being shorter, it is better to, maintain brevity. And the other is simplicity. I find the simplicity of language works very well with the readers because unless you're trying to write something very, very literary, if you're equipped to do that, please do. But for average writer like me, I'm a very average writer, I consider. And for me, simplicity is the best policy. I find the simplicity of language, which does not require the reader to go to the dictionary every 2 minutes, works for him. It doesn't slow down the story. So these 4 tips, if you keep in mind, I think you should be successful in whatever you are doing. And please, these are not advices for everyone. These are my experiences. And I'm just sharing my experiences. I'm no one to advise anyone. And I have worked very hard to get where for many at this point from many, many years. So I'm just sharing some of the things I learned along the way.
No, thank you so much for this. We have another question from Nidhi, who wants to ask, how much time do you spend in research for a book and what are your sources?
Nidhi, see, each book requires a different span for research. Like I have written historicals, Nurjahan's Daughter and Escape from Harem. They have required a whole lot of research. And that is the reason that I haven't written another historical after those 2, because they take immense, effort and research. You have to be in that era. You have to know what the people were like, what they ate, what they wore, what are the customs, what are the kind of language, nuances. So those things are not very easy. That takes time. Same thing I would say about my mysteries, because I had to consult forensic experts, the police procedural people. So these are the things that I had to, research. So every time you step into a genre, you have to do a lot of research. Unless you do research and you don't know the subject very well, it shows in the work. So the research factor is actually dependent on how serious you are about the genre.
We have another one from Sina. Sina wants to know, you mentioned about being cheated by a publishing house. So did this have any impact on your writings thereafter, and how did you deal with it?
The unpleasant episode?
Yeah, the unpleasant episode.
Okay. See, I did give I had given an interview to Times of India about this, about the problem of plagiarization and illegal use of manuscript. And I was at Bangalore at that time, and there was a huge article about it, which actually terrified the publisher. He really realized it can get him into trouble if I go around and tell the press about it, because it'll sort of paint them in a very bad picture. It was a very unpleasant episode. It took me a while to get over it. But I think, looking back at the past and being regretful is not a choice one would like to make. I would like to keep moving forward. I would like to remain optimistic. And yes, I think over the last 15 years, I have grown wiser, and I have dealt with things in a more mature manner.
Thank you. Vishaka has written, I fondly remember meeting you in your workshop at Cafe Pagdandi. My question is, what is your process for a non-fiction book from ideation to completing the manuscript, and what factors one should keep in mind?
See, in a non-fiction book, it is very important to know the subject very well that you're writing about. It is important in fiction too, but in non-fiction, it becomes crucial because your entire book hinges on that subject which you have chosen. So the more you research, the more sure you are about your sources, the authenticity of the sources, it helps you. You have to research, and you have to have a clear layout of how you're going to approach the subject. Now, for instance, if you give me an example, I can, maybe quote better. Say, pick a subject and just text it.
Vishaka? Sure. Indian festivals.
I think
she's written
Indian festivals. Okay, so now Indian festival is a very broad spectrum. If you're talking about Indian spectrum, the festivals, you would like to cover all regions. And while covering, you shouldn't, focus only on the central huge regions. You must also give, prominence to the smaller areas, because there are lots of festivals. Supposing it's in the Northeast, you may not know about them. So you'll have to research those areas, because that will be the point of interest. Readers will want to know about that factor more than they would like to know what is happening in Delhi or Bombay or Chennai, because that part is not known. These parts are very well written, and always you'll find some article coming out on the Indian festivals in these regions. So I would suggest that you focus on the smaller areas also, give them prominence, and that will get a publisher also interested in the story. I hope it helps.
Sure. Thank you. Tanushree, I had a question. You mentioned that one of your books was released in 2005. And then just recently, a couple of years ago, it started getting a lot of attention, and you just signed it for a screen adaptation. So were you asked to change aspects? Because I'm sure 2005 to what, 2018 or 15 or so, things have changed, be it technology, be it life, or even if it's maybe you want to make it relevant to the COVID pandemic thing also, there are smaller aspects which authors have been asked to change by the publishers whose novels have been postponed. So were you approached for that kind of changes, or were you suggested to make such changes, and how did this work?
No, I wasn't asked to make any changes, because see what happens when you give a book for adaptation, unless you're doing the screenplay and the scripting, you won't have any role to play really, because those are specialized jobs. An author's job finishes with the selling of the book. If you were to step into those roles, you'll have to do some specialized courses and want to get into those and ask the producer whether you can do the screenplay and the scripting and, you know, those things. So those factors, and let's be very honest, an author doesn't have any say in the adaptation process because that's another medium altogether. You have signed a contract, you have given your rights to the producer, and now that producer is going to adapt it according to his own audience and the marketability. So I don't think they will consult any author about that.
That's been a very helpful tip. Thank you so much, Tanushree. I think we will now want to talk a little about the FDC. So as I can see from the tracker, Vandana, I've seen that you've written 9,000 words in 1 week. Would you like to share your experiences? That's commendable. That's actually brilliant. 9,000 words.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Would you like to share something, some tips, some experiences?
No tips actually, Namrata. And like Pam told, I'm actually living with my characters. So it's on my always in my mind 24 hours. And if I don't write it out, I can't even eat or sleep. So that's one of the things. I'm literally living in that. And it was a holiday period, which helped actually. So, and I made up a commitment, like I've been dragging this a lot. So I was a bit, no, I have to do it. And the only thing is, I seriously, when, as I told you, I'm living with the characters, when I'm just writing about them, I feel that they are around me, and it's a kind of a lovely experience. So that's, I don't know how much it will help, but that's how it is. And I do make myself to come and sit in a place and do it. I normally write better at nights. So I stay awake long time and take breaks and write, keep writing. And when I see that, okay, I've done this much, I give myself a pat, keeps doing some more.
Wow.
So that's it. Thanks, Namrata.
That's great. That's great.
So Vinita has also
Thank you,
written
ma'am.
18,000 words. That is also brilliant. I don't know. I cannot see her. Is Vinita, are you there in this session? I don't think she's there in the session as well. But that's actually brilliant. That's too good.
She put it in the
Commendable.
group in the morning. She has put it in the WhatsApp group in the morning. She does that with audio transcriptions, I think.
Okay.
So that's it.
Even Sapna has written 7,500 words. That's also a very good score. And Ashisha Chakravarti has also written 7,500. You guys are actually nailing it. This is too good. This way, I'm sure at least all I can see that, you know, you can actually finish your first draft if you go at this pace very easily. Anybody else wants to share their experience about FDC? About writing? Any questions? Chetan, do you want to say something? I'm not sure is there. I think we'll call this session to an end then. Thank you so much, Tanushree. It was wonderful having you here, and your experiences, learning from them has been just too helpful. Thank you so much. Yeah, Chetan, did you want to speak something about FDC? Yeah.
No, I just wanted to remind everyone that the second week is starting now. I've been on the session the whole time. I was on mute because I was in a car. But as per Ram's analysis, the second week is usually the difficult week. That's the week when people will hit a slump, when, you know, the enthusiasm and the vigor of the first week might wear off a little bit. Yeah. So be aware of that and try and make sure that you stick with the program, that you don't let the demotivation set in, but keep yourself motivated, keep yourself moving forward. This is when it becomes a little difficult for a lot of writers. So just being aware of that and watching for that will help you. And yes, all the best. It's been fantastic, Tanushree ji, listening to you and all your experience. I had a whole bunch of questions that were in my mind, but I didn't want to interrupt because we just about made it on time. But maybe what I'll do is have a separate call with you, and then we can chat about some of the questions that I had as well. But thank you again.
Absolutely, any day, anytime.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Tanushree. See you next week.
Thank you so much.
See you next week.
Thank you, everyone, and wish you all the best. I hope each of you finishes their first draft and gets published so that I can also read your book. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.